The thoughts and opinions in this episode are all mine from my crazy little mind and might not reflect those of our sponsors. So if you find yourself raising an eyebrow, blame me, not them. All right, let's go. Home sellers, today we continue our assault on real estate BS. As I mentioned in the last couple of episodes, when I was raised in this business, lots of experienced agents took kindly to me and decided to share all these amazing little secrets about the business. And unfortunately, over the years, I found most of them to be 100% garbage. So today is no different. Today's BS comes from years of not only enduring it, but it was sparked by a recent interaction with a traditional realtor. The BS phrase of the day is, "That's the standard commission. Unfortunately, I'm unable to change it." Stick around, because today's episode, I'm going to expose this myth and show you how to spot it, why it's wrong, and explain how to defeat it once and for all. So without further ado, let's attack today's BS. Welcome to Talking Realty, the go-to podcast for home sellers who want to make more money, save time, and avoid headaches. Whether you're selling a flip, a new build, an income property, or the place you call home, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Glen Whitten, 20-year realtor and founder of the Ohio Property Group. Most home sellers hate paying huge commissions to realtors. At the Ohio Property Group, we do all the same things as other realtors, but instead of charging 6%, we charge a low flat fee. So our sellers save thousands of dollars in commissions and they get better results. To learn more, head over to talkingrealty.com and pick up our monthly newsletter or any of our free home seller tools. Quick reminder, you can watch all of these podcast episodes on YouTube. And if you're watching me now, quick reminder that all of these episodes are available on every major and minor podcast platform. Now, let's get to it. Any given week, we are negotiating with somebody for something. That's just the nature of what we do, whether it's the initial contract, the inspection remedies, the appraisal values, or maybe the closing costs. Part of our job is to make sure that our sellers get the best possible outcome from any back and forth, any negotiations with the other side. So the other day, we're getting very close to closing on one of our listings, and nothing too crazy happened. We were about 3 days from closing, and I get this last minute email from the buyer's camp. And I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but there's a way to present last minute changes to the other side of the deal, and there's a way not to do it. The first thing to do is nothing that they did. They just prepared an addendum, had the buyers sign it, and they changed 3 major items. That would be the closing date, the price, and the seller concessions. They just, whoop, here we are. 3 days before closing, we're going to change 3 of the biggest terms in the entire contract. Then they emailed it to me with a sentence that just said, "Please have your seller sign this and return it." No explanation, no apology, nothing, just nada, just nothing. When I asked about it, I was told, "Oh, we thought you knew. Sorry, please have your seller sign it and return it." Okay, so once again, no explanation, just sign it and return it. Well, I was raised by a woman who taught me to question everything, so I questioned it. I pushed back. And what I got back was, again, no explanation. So now we're on the 3rd email. All it said was, "It is a net zero change for the seller, so no big deal." That's a quote. So no big deal. Okay. This is the kind of bullying that some clients and maybe some agents are used to from experienced agents. So as I push back, explaining that this is a request, so I have to first remind them that they can't make the seller do anything. So I'm reminding them, I said that I will present this to the seller for a decision and let you know what they say, but it would really help if you could fill in some of the gaps. Why are we making these 3 significant changes? Eventually, I did get a brief, call it a bare bones explanation that included details that we were not aware of. They're not relevant here, so I won't go into them, but suffice it to say, these were significant factors that would have influenced us during the offer phase. So that was frustrating, but it doesn't matter. We're 3 days from closing, and I'm sure the seller would rather close than start over, go back out, and we're getting closer and closer to the holidays. So I don't know that the seller is going to want to go back out there and start all over when they're planning to sell here in the next few days. What should have happened first would have been an apology. That would have been my first move. I would have sent an apology, an explanation, a detailed list of the changes I need and why, And then I would offer to put together an addendum once everybody agreed, because you shouldn't automatically assume that they will, because it's arrogant and it's not great communication. But had they apologized, explained, offered to put together an addendum, and then we come together and great, now we're moving forward, that would have made the process much, much smoother. Remember, truth number 10, the love peaks during the offer and it fades all the way to closing. Well, check your calendar. We're almost at closing. So a lot of the love was still in the tank, but they drained it almost entirely with one email, with one misstep. So the bottom line was the changes were not net zero to my seller. They were not a lot. It was a few $100s. But as we say, if you saw it on the ground, you'd bend over and pick it up. But the buyer's agent conveniently ignored this, tried to haze over it, didn't even want to address it. And when I pushed back and said, hey, who's going to pay this extra few $100s that it's going to cost the seller? They seemed shocked. They were shocked. Just like, what do you mean the extra money? What are you talking about? So I explained that every day we go past closing costs the seller money. Taxes, insurance, mortgage interest if they have a mortgage, utilities, not to mention they have lands for that money. So now that all gets delayed. So they're just assuming that they're operating in this perfect little vacuum Garden of Eden and that they can just make decisions and it doesn't affect anyone. Well, okay, not true. They also raised the price of the deal and they offset it with concessions. That was the whole point of it. They wanted extra time to close because they had to go back through underwriting. All right, no problem. But they wanted to finance a bunch of their closing costs. The appraisal came in high, so they wanted to bump up to the top of the appraisal and get that money back at closing. In other words, finance their closing costs. Well, that's all well and good, but every time you raise the price, the seller has to pay more in commission and they have to pay more in transfer taxes. And there are other variable things that happen when you raise the price of a deal that mostly affect the seller. The point is they were just blowing over it, hoping we wouldn't notice, I guess. I don't really know. Or maybe they were just unaware. I find that hard to believe. But anyway, so they actually asked me to send them a calculation, a line item calculation of the extra money. Okay, no problem. So I put that together, sent it over. And interestingly, about half of the extra money was the seller having to pay more commission so the buyer could finance their closing costs. The seller wasn't getting any more. In fact, they were getting less money out of the deal. When the buyer agent got back to me, they said that unfortunately, the buyer was not in a position to make up the extra few $100s. That was it. They're just like, nope, sorry. So I made a suggestion. I said, well, probably you should just adjust your commission to offset that money so we can continue forward. And the agent's commission in this deal is 5 figures. Okay. I don't want to get too specific, but it was 5 figures. And so I'm like, why not adjust your commission? I mean, help your client out who clearly needs the help because they can't afford to do it. And we had to make this little shenanigan shell game happen to help them. And now you're making more money. Maybe, I don't know, ding, 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 you could help your client. And I got back, here it is, today's BS line. Unfortunately, that's the standard commission and I'm unable to change it. Whew, man, my BS meter went crazy. I actually had a whole different podcast episode planned. I stopped and decided to do this one. So stick around. I'll tell you exactly how we handled it and the rest of the story at the end. And in the meantime, we'll talk about the history of this BS line, how to spot it and what to do with it. So a lot of agents use this line because when you charge massive commissions and if you don't deliver the kind of value that is, say, equal to or within range of the commission you're charging, naturally people are going to question it, especially if they're the ones paying it. So for example, if I took my car in for a repair and watched them, say, change the windshield wipers and got a bill for $1,000, I might question that. But if I took my car in and it was completely wrecked and I got it back and it ran great and didn't look like it was wrecked anymore and got a bill for $1,000, I'd probably be doing cartwheels. So there is a relative response there. Well, when you're selling a house for a buyer and you're walking away with a 5-figure commission, it is entirely possible that people who are paying that commission or somehow involved in that commission are going to question it. So my point is that a lot of realtors get really, really good at responding to this question. They teach it in training. They taught me. Now, the cool thing about my life as a realtor is, one, I wasn't in traditional real estate long enough to become a listing agent. When I became a listing agent, I came out of the gate as a flat fee realtor. I was charging everybody the exact same amount, just like I do today, 20 years later. And as many of you know, that was born out of a lunch conversation with my good friend, Bob, who, when I was with Remax, was getting ready to list his second or third house with us. I don't remember. And it wasn't with me. I helped him buy houses he was looking to sell. Anyway, we were having lunch. He says, so let me get this straight. If I list a house for $150,000, it's going to cost me $9,000 to list with Remax. Yeah. But then if I list a $300,000 house, it's going to cost me $18,000. So what am I getting for the extra $9,000? I had no answer for him. And when I went back to my broker, I did not get a good answer. That was around the first time I heard, well, that's the standard commission. But the point is, I hear this a lot, that the standard commission can't be changed. Well, it's like it's some unbreakable rule or some law that everybody has to follow. Well, spoiler alert, no, it isn't. It is an excuse to avoid negotiating. It's an excuse to avoid an uncomfortable conversation. You just, it's out of my hands. So I'm guessing this is taught to rookies by their brokers at a very early age and by other agents, because everybody wants to protect the house of cards. So they have to reinforce this or that house of cards comes tumbling down. It protects their commission while making it sound like it's something, boy, if it were up to me, I would change it, but I'm unable to because it's the standard commission. It creates this illusion as if all agents are bound to this magical 6% structure. It's like saying it doesn't matter who you use, you're still going to pay the standard commission. That's why it's such a toxic pile of BS. It's also probably why after 20 years of practicing flat fee, where we fly in the face of all this, we still get sellers who think there's something wrong with our model. I mean, literally everybody I talk to says, oh yeah, that's 6% traditional. That's way too much. But then we present our fee and it's like, ooh, I don't know. So that seems too good to be true. That's like, dude, you just told me that 6% was too much. I present you with a completely different model that's sensible. And I can show you to the hour why our fees, what they are. That's how messed up things are. But anyway, I digress. So reality check. There is no standard commission. And that has been legally clarified and ruled upon very recently. Burnett versus NAR. Google it. I'll link to it in the show notes, or go to my NAR page, because we've got all kinds of content about this. This was in a couple of papers, as my dad used to say. There is no such thing as a standard commission. And this kind of talk where listing agents and buyer's agents are out spewing, oh man, we can't adjust that. Whew, boy, if we could, we would. But that's the commission. That's the standard. That's the way it is. It's what you got to pay. That's what led to a bunch of realtors getting sued back in 2020 in Kansas, and they lost. These homeowners got together. They sued the judge, jury. Everybody ruled in favor of the home sellers who said this is garbage. There's a lot of shenanigans going on. And there was a lot to the case, but this was one of the main points of it, is that home sellers were led to believe that they had to pay 6% to sell their house if they wanted to use a realtor. And judge and jury, they rule and they award these home sellers $1.8 billion. $1.8 billion. And sure enough, as soon as that verdict came down, a whole bunch of lawyers lined up with similar lawsuits. A whole bunch of lawsuits just started. And NAR, the National Association of Realtors, our parent company, they saw fit to stop the bleeding. So they went to court and decided they were going to settle this. Long story, I've done lots of episodes about it. But anyway, they end up settling. And one of the rules of the settlement was that from now on, we can no longer discuss commission in the MLS, because that was part of the problem. And every piece of paper we have a client sign for a listing agreement, a buyer agent agreement, purchase agreement, these things all have to have a statement that says all commissions are negotiable and not set by law, any association, or any other entity. Okay, they were very specific about this. We had to go back and change a bunch of our paperwork. I'll repeat that. All commissions are negotiable and not set by law, any association, or any other entity. You follow me on this? All right. Therefore, if we're printing that and people are signing it, and then an agent verbally tells someone, man, that is the standard commission, I'm sorry, I'm not able to change that. I'm unable to change it. I can't change it. Some variation of that, well, we now have a problem. This episode of Talking Realty is brought to you by our friends at Associates Title. This team is shaking things up by focusing on what truly matters putting the customer first. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, for sale by owner, or working with a realtor, they've got your back with incredible cost savings and the latest tech to streamline the process. Their secure online portal keeps everyone in the loop, from buyers and sellers to lenders and agents, all while keeping your data safe, very important, and communication crystal clear. If you're getting ready to make a move, don't underestimate the importance of having a great title company in your corner. Check them out today at associatestitleinc.com or call my friend Ryan Phillips at 614-419-2418. Do not leave your title company choice to chance, and certainly don't let the buyer or their agent make that choice for you. Now, back to the podcast. There's a few examples of this. The first one is when you're hiring the agent to work for you, because in the state of Ohio, along with many, many other places, you can't hire a buyer's agent or a listing agent and have them do any work for you unless and until you sign an agreement, a piece of paper engaging those realtors for their services. And the piece of paper is supposed to outline the services that are going to be rendered and what the cost will be. We call it, on my world, we call it a listing agreement. If you're a buyer agent, they call it a buyer agency agreement. Not too creative, but it gets the job done. So not only does it contain this statement, all commissions are negotiable and not set by law, association, or any other entity, it also contains a list of what they're going to do and how much they're going to charge. So during that time, if you, the buyer or the seller, for whatever reason, cannot afford those fees, you can go somewhere else, look for an alternative. I don't know, maybe stop by the Ohio Property Group's website if you're in Ohio, or you can ask them to negotiate it. You can negotiate that fee. I have sellers that list with me, not because I'm so amazing, which is crazy to me. Everybody should think I'm amazing, but anyhow, at least they should think my team is amazing. But some people list with us because they literally can't afford to pay 6% to sell their house through a traditional agent. So they come to me looking for an alternative. Then they always come back to me. And when I hear this story of, well, I don't have 6% equity in my house and I just need to get out from under it because I got this problem or that problem, I'll usually go back and say, hey, did you try? Oh yeah, I called the agent that I normally use and they told me, sorry, can't negotiate it, can't drop it. Wish I could, but I can't. We have realtors who list their property with us because their own company will make them pay, quote unquote, the standard commission. Just tells you how deep these waters run. So the next scenario where this comes up is during negotiations. You get an offer, and that offer includes a caveat that you, the seller, will be paying the buyer's agent their fee. It's probably going to look strangely like 3% of the deal, because that is the usual fee. I definitely won't call it the standard fee because there is no standard fee, but more often than not, we see agents taking a run at 3%. So first of all, I did a whole episode on negotiating buyer agent commissions post settlement. So I will link to that. Go check that out because there's some pretty specific language in there. I'll give you some today on how to combat this particular BS, but I've got some back and forth tactical language in there that may be helpful for you. But let's say the deal is close to coming together, but you're not quite there. There's a gap. You know, what they want to pay and what you're going to walk away with, AKA your net number, are not quite jiving. So you decide, let's ask the agent if they want to kick in. So the agent refuses to adjust their commission, citing that they are unable to do it and the deal never comes together. Why? Why does this happen? I mean, you and I are thinking part of some deal is better than all of no deal, but whatever. Because if word gets out that the local agent, your local agent, is willing to negotiate their commission either during the listing, during the buyer presentation, or God forbid, during a negotiation, other clients may find out and they may want a deal. This is what the agent's thinking. All may be lost. Not only would other clients maybe find out, but worse, much, much worse, other realtors might find out. And once they recognize that somebody is not towing the company line, it might go badly for that agent if word gets out that they're not sticking to the program. Another moment where this may come up, inspections come back, and all of a sudden there's either a problem you didn't know about, or the buyer just feels like they need a little bit of a discount. So maybe they go after you via the credit, or, oh, I'm going to need $5,000 off, or I'm going to need you to replace the furnace, which is working perfectly, but maybe it's a little old. Now we have another gap right here. The buyer is stopped here. They're willing to walk away. You, the seller, don't really want to, but you also don't want to take it to the shorts. So you go back, you ask the buyer agent, hey, Any chance you can, participate in our little thing here to keep this deal alive? And you get the same BS. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do that. Truth. An agent's commission is the easiest lever to pull to make that deal work. Most often, if we don't negotiate the commission for the buyer agent down during negotiations initially, we will almost certainly get to it here during inspections. It's not a fun conversation. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we have it. We have no problems having that because part of a commission on a deal that closes is better than all of a commission on a deal that never closes. And I sometimes have to remind my realtor counterparts of this. Another time, although not as common as the negotiation or inspections time, another point where this conversation comes up is during a low appraisal. So the property comes in lower than the appraised price. What you want to do is, of course, appeal it. But while you're appealing it, you need to figure out a way to close that gap because the appeal probably isn't going to work. Somebody's got to make up the difference. I can promise you, as a seller, all eyes are on you. Everybody expects you to just roll over, lower your price, and deal with it. Well, not in my world. I use that time during the appraisal appeal to work on everybody else. Ask the buyer, how much cash can you bring? What costs can we trim from this deal? Whatever. And the biggest cost, I almost guarantee you, when you look at the cost between what the deal was put together for and what you're going to walk away with, if you line item out all of those things, I'll bet you number one on that list is the agent's commission. So why not go after it? If you don't ask, the answer is always no. I would have no problems with that. But you're probably going to be met, at least initially, with, I'm sorry, I'm unable to do that, because that's how they've been trained to respond to that question because it comes up so often. They're conditioned to prioritize their paycheck over what's best for their client. And this is probably why this irritates me. Because let's be honest, if my seller ends up eating it or the buyer ends up paying it and the agent gets their full commission, it's no skin off my nose. It really isn't. If I've tried to negotiate and we were unsuccessful and all the other parties agree, why would I get so pissed off about this? Well, the answer is because I get what's going on behind the curtain. That agent is putting their paycheck ahead of their client's needs. That is not how the fiduciary relationship works. You are to put your client's needs ahead of your needs. Doesn't mean you have to work for free, but you cannot prioritize your needs ahead of your clients. It's not how it works. Traditional agents, a lot of them see their commission as untouchable. Now, that's not to say it's never happened, because we are very successful at getting people to lower their commission when the situation warrants it. And, we just have to be persuasive. These traditional agents who don't want to bend, or maybe whose brokers tell them, no, you absolutely can't lower your commission, they're banking on the fact that one way or another, if everybody sticks to the 6% traditional standard, I'm unable to change it playbook, that what comes around goes around. Your deal may come apart on you right there, but your client is going to either buy or sell anyway, more than likely. They could drop off. It's a risk you're going to take because of the greater good. At least this is what's going on inside their meeting rooms. It's better to lose one deal because you didn't lower your commission than have to lower your commission on every other deal. So that's how they're playing this. And they've been playing it for decades upon decades upon decades, i.e. so long and so badly, people had to get sued in order to at least try to undo some of the damage that's going on here, which I'm here to tell you, some of it's being undone, but most of it is not. It's pretty much business as usual out there right now. These agents sitting in this situation where they're being asked to lower their commission in order to make a deal work, they feel that eventually the buyer and the seller's needs are going to win out. That if I just stay firm on my commission, eventually the buyer or the seller or some combination of the two are going to step up. They're going to close the gap and we're going to make this deal and I'm going to get my full paycheck, or that they're going to get it on the next deal. So if the buyer doesn't get this house, yes, they'll be disappointed, but eventually we'll get back out there and we'll get it done. And odds are that buyer may never know this conversation happened, because if you, the seller, have this conversation with the buyer's agent, like, hey, what can we do about this? I would highly recommend you copy the buyer if you can, because they're banking on the fact that their buyer is never going to know that they were asked to lower their commission and that they refuse to do so. They cling to this myth, these traditional agents who are unwilling, and not only unwilling to bend on their commission, but willing to make statements like, that's the standard commission, I'm unable to change it. They've been doing this, as I said, for a long, long time. And I just had a thought. Have you ever noticed that if you were to walk up to the average traditional realtor and ask them to tell you what they do? Hey, you sell houses, right? Tell me, how does that work? What do you do? They're going to start to talk about marketing. They're going to start to talk about networking, their pool of buyers. They're going to talk about their incredible marketing materials. They're going to talk about every service they offer, negotiation, paperwork, concierge. They may even come over and help you move. I have no idea. But you're going to get a litany of their services they offer, but they don't ask any qualifying questions before they start to answer. But if you ask the agent to the penny, what is it going to cost me to hire you to do all this? They can't answer that question without first asking you, how much is your house? Now, mind you, they just told you that they offer the same services to everybody. And the reason I know that is because they didn't ask you anything about your house before they answered the question. But as soon as you start talking dollars and cents, now they got to know how much is your house. So you see the problem here. This is what Bob was pointing out at lunch. They can't tell you how much they charge until they know how much your house is worth. But the services don't change. The fee changes, but the services don't. Crazy. That is just crazy to me. All right, I digress again. Anyway, agents rely on sellers being unaware of alternatives. They think, okay, I survived the bullet. They asked, I said my standard line, I'm able to do that. Whew, I'm out there. Because agents rely on sellers and buyers being unaware of any alternatives like flat fee companies. It's also easier to blame the standard practice than it is to actually negotiate and defend their fee. I would have more respect for an agent who said, yeah, I can do that, but I'm not going to. That is a true statement. That is perfectly ethical, perfectly legal to say, yeah, I can do that, but I'm not going to. And then defend their position. We get people all the time. They want to know if we're not running any sort of special, which we do very infrequently. But I have no problems defending what we charge because I know that it's a value. I know because clients tell me over and over and over, dude, you don't charge enough. We'll talk about that another day. But anyway, it is so much easier for them to blame the standard practice, the broker, the company. It's out of my hands. And like a lot of myths, I think some of these people actually believe that it's true. I think there are realtors out there today in 2024 who believe post lawsuit, post settlement, post all the education we all had to do, who still believe that 6% is the standard commission. You know how I know that? Because I still hear it. I still hear it. They'll get an offer. It will have a 3% commission clause. The seller will counter. We'll send the counter back with a 1.5 or a 2% commission or a flat dollar amount commission. And I'll get hate mail from the agent. This is after the settlement. This is, well, that's not the standard commission. I'll just take my buyer somewhere else. Oh, take your buyer. So now it's not about what the buyer wants anymore, right? It's about what you want. It's about what you get. Has nothing to do with meeting the needs of your buyers, finding the house that they love. None of that matters, right? You have so much sway over your buyer that you can just say, we're not buying that house. You're going to live somewhere else. I don't buy it. Another reason realtors stick to this is they just don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to be blacklisted as someone who doesn't play by the unwritten rules. And I don't know what to say about that. I know realtors will eat their young. I mean, we already know this. I joke about this all the time, that if you watch any sort of crime show, go to any murder mystery, if there is among the potential suspects a realtor or a real estate developer, 100% guarantee you they will end up being the killer. They will end up being the bad guy. It's so funny. Every crime show I watch, there's a realtor. I can basically skip the episode because I already know what's going to happen and turn out to be the realtor. So we already know they can be a vicious lot. But when they find out one of their own has turned on them and is now offering services at less than the standard commission, that's a problem. And that person will suffer the consequences for doing it. All right, there is a better way. We'll just say all in on the whole flat fee model thing. If you want to learn more about it, head to talkingrealty.com and see what we're all about. But if you're not in Ohio, believe me, this alternative exists elsewhere. Come get a hold of me and I might not be able to find somebody for you, but I can at least tell you what to look for so that you can go out and you can find somebody who can do this for you. But even if you're hiring a traditional realtor or you're going with a flat fee company that does nothing else besides put your property in the MLS, you can take everything from these podcasts, from my book, from lots of other sources, our YouTube channel, and many, many other really good content creators. And you can go out and you can survive this process. In fact, you can do quite well. So that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, either way, when an agent is uneducated, when an agent is gullible, in other words, they believe this garbage, or unscrupulous enough to say the words, I can't do that, I'm unable to do that, why in the world would you trust them with one of the largest transactions of your life? I don't get that. I just don't. Because truth number 9, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if people will lie to you at the outset of the process, if they will lie to you to get the listing, if they will lie to you to get a deal together, if they will lie to you to get through discussions during inspections and appraisals and other hiccups along the way that show up on almost every deal, well, then they will lie to you about just about anything else. But the reason I love what I do so much, besides the fact that I get to work with Tasia and Justin, AKA my adult children, besides that, is that I can sleep like a baby because we use a fair, across the board, inclusive system that is based on the services provided and has nothing to do with the price of your home. I couldn't explain it 20 some years ago to Bob. I still can't explain it today. So the truth, commissions are negotiable. Sellers, you need to know, you can challenge inflated commissions. I'm not saying that every realtor will cave, but if you don't ask, the answer is no. Most home sellers dread inspection and appraisal issues. Our digital course, Living to Listing, teaches you how to turn any property into the perfect listing so you sail through inspections, sail through appraisals, sell faster, and for more money. In Living to Listing, you get dozens of checklists, tools, and walkthrough videos from me for every step. And here's my promise. If this course doesn't make you money, doesn't save you time, doesn't meet your high standards, I want you to just let me know. Not only am I going to refund the course, but I'm going to let you keep it. That's how confident I am that Living to Listing is exactly what you're looking for. You literally have nothing to lose. Check out the free preview videos today at livingtolisting.com. That's livingtolisting.com. Let me know what you think. Now, back to your regularly scheduled broadcast. My advice is to make commissions part of every conversation when it matters most to your deal. So that would be during negotiations, during inspection issues, during appraisal issues, and during closing issues. And there are myriad problems that arise on any deal. It might be something as simple as a mortgage survey that shows your fence is on the neighbor's setback or something. Like, okay, somebody somewhere is going to have to fix this before the deal can close. There you go. I say, why not at least try to see if the agent will participate in that whole, we're tightening the belt, can you help us? A couple of things you can do when you are in that situation, because I like to give practical advice, is first of all, ask the agent, just hit them straight up. This is best done verbally. If you do it by email, it's not as effective because then they have time to think and respond. I would rather do it face-to-face if I could, or at least FaceTime or on the phone. Those would be the order, maybe text. But if you're going to do this by text, start the conversation first. Start back. Hey, how you doing? Got a question? You got a minute? Yeah, sure. Now they can't ghost you when you send the question. If you just send the question, then they can ghost you and say, oh, I didn't see it. Sorry. Then they got plenty of time to get a hold of somebody, maybe their sponsor, to come up with an answer. But anyway, the short version is, hey, is your commission negotiable? Nice and simple. If they say no, then you know their priorities. Call out the BS. If they tell you they can't change their commission, remind them there is no standard rate. Don't be afraid to challenge the numbers. Commissions are just really one piece of the deal. But if your deal isn't working, look at the size of that commission and ask yourself, what percentage of the solution could that be without really affecting the agent? And I'm not saying that agents don't deserve to get paid. I've said this over and over and over my whole career. I think they should get paid fairly and equitably, but I would never, ever want to be in a position where my commission was the reason a deal couldn't come together or stay together. I would be very unhappy with that. And frankly, I would be thinking long-term in terms of, hey, if I get this deal together, at least I've got a client for life. I've got good word of mouth references, and that stuff matters, especially the longer you stick around. If you're only in this for the next deal and you're out, well, then you probably don't care much about that stuff. A general set of responses, because this is where it's at. You want scripts? I got your scripts. And I put a lot of thought into this. And most of these have been tried out. So I threw out the clunkers that didn't work. But you know how if you go to a restaurant, sometimes they have spicy meals and they'll put a little pepper next to it. Some of these are spicy. So you got to work with your own personality and your own relationship. I have no problems going for the throat most of the time, but I am warning you, some of these are spicy. I'll tell you which ones. This one's a little spicy. So out of the gate, when I hear the response, I'm unable to do that. That's the standard commission. I'm unable to change it. I want you to try this. You ready? Here we go. I realize you don't want to adjust your commission to save this deal. Perhaps your broker even said you can't. I can assure you that if this deal falls apart because you are inflexible with your commission, we will look for someone else to represent us going forward. All right, so here we're coming out with the big wood. This is a threat, but you're letting them know that if they have plans of working with you after this deal comes unglued because they wouldn't shave their commission to make the deal work, you have no intention of using them. I think that is only fair to let them know that. It also saves you a really awkward conversation down the road when they're trying to solicit your business and you are like, no, why would I work with you? Right? You prioritized your commission over my deal. I don't want to do that. All right. So that's a spicy one for you. Here's another one. I understand, but I was under the impression that commissions are now negotiable according to the new NAR rules. Can you explain why you are exempt from those rules? That's also a little on the spicy side. So maybe those don't work for you. But maybe this one will. You've asked and they've answered, and you say, I understand, but I've noticed that commissions are listed as negotiable in all the paperwork we signed. Can you help me understand what specifically is preventing you from making this adjustment? Now, after all of these lines said verbally, shut up. People have problems with spaces in conversations. They want to fill that gap. And you've probably heard the old line, he who speaks first loses. Well, that absolutely applies here. So after you drop one of these little bombs, just sit there, wait for them to make a response. More often than not, they're probably going to give you what you're asking for, or at least see what they can do about it while they run and try to get some reinforcements. But you've put them on notice. Here's number 4. That's surprising to hear, given that commissions are not fixed by law or policy. If there's another reason why you're unable to adjust, I'd appreciate your transparency. A little bit of an embarrassment one. Not really spicy, maybe a little bit spicy, but not. This is more like Taco Bell mild sauce here. Number 5, if they say it's not up to them, if they blame the company or they blame their broker or something like that, just go straight for the answer and say, who has the authority to make this decision, and when can we bring them into this conversation to get a resolution? Quiet, don't say anything. Somebody somewhere is making the decision. Somebody told them they couldn't do it. They must either be able to make the decision or they know somebody who can. All right. Number 6, perhaps we should consult your buyer before we, okay, this one's spicy. Perhaps we should consult your buyer before we let this deal die. Since you're working for them, they may be willing to pay some of your commissions rather than let this deal go away. When can we set that up? Okay, silence. Did you notice I practiced a little silence there? The other option, of course, is to just explore some alternatives. If you're in Ohio, I highly recommend the Ohio Property Group. I hear they're pretty good. You might want to check them out. So, how did this story end? So, going back here, I got the BS line. 3 days before closing, buyer's camp needed to make some changes so the buyer could finance a bunch of their closing costs. So they raised the price by quite a bit and then included that same amount as a seller concession. So they raised it by X thousands of dollars, but then asked for X thousands of dollars back. So the seller gets none of that, but they have to incur the extra commission, the extra taxes. And oh, by the way, it has to go back through underwriting. So it's going to be delayed. And we were going back and forth, and I'm trying to figure out who's going to cover the several $100 expenses that the seller's going to incur. And I was told that the buyer couldn't do it, and the agent said they can't do it. So I typed a really, really nasty response where I cited chapter and verse from the NAR lawsuits. I accused them of putting their needs ahead of their buyers. I did all the stuff I told you probably. I don't know if I mentioned that you should probably be polite and conciliatory when you do these things, because truth number 3, emotions are very expensive. And when you get angry and you let your lizard brain take over, as Seth Godin says, who is a brilliant marketer, by the way, never, ever let the lizard send an email. Well, the lizard was about to send an email, but fortunately I've learned over the years to get somebody in the boat with me before I send one of these bridge burning emails. I couldn't get a hold of anybody on my team, so I went to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is, I don't know, if you haven't played with it, you really should. But anyway, ChatGPT is not only my advisor, my brainstorm buddy, but also my therapist, because it remembers all kinds of things about me. And it would do this for you too. I start off every prompt with, "This is Glenn." And then I just start dumping stuff out. So in this case, I said, "This is Glenn." I explained the situation. I dumped a draft of my email and just said, "Hey, can you clean this up?" And Chat gave me a very nice, but very direct email that essentially said, "Your buyer has a problem. You want to fix it, but you don't want to participate in the solution. You want my seller to do it. And that is entirely unfair. it was worded even better than that, but it was so nice. And I didn't get all of it, but we got enough of it to make the seller happy, because the seller ultimately did want to close. The seller ultimately didn't want to start over. And so rather than burn everything, the seller was like, yeah, you got some of it. I appreciate that. Let's get back in there. And so we ended up signing. Everything's happy. We're moving ahead. Everything, it's actually closed now. So all is well that ends well. What I want you to take away from this is that commissions are always negotiable, always. And that any agent who tells you otherwise is either lying or doesn't have the skills or the scruples to put your needs first. If they tell you that they can, but they won't, and they can defend it properly, that's a different story. But I don't know anybody who, if I'm selling $1 million property and I'm collecting a $60,000 commission, and then the next day I'm selling a $100,000 property and collecting a $6,000 commission for doing virtually the same thing, I don't get it. How can I explain away the other $54,000? I can't. That means there's a fundamental flaw. If they blame their company or their broker, ask to speak to someone who has the authority. Remember, all clients belong to the broker. The broker makes the decisions for everything inside of that that's legal, including commissions. So I don't care if they're part of a huge franchise. Name any franchise you know. If you're talking to the broker of that particular franchise, they have the authority to change the commission. I don't care what they tell you. I can assure you, if you're talking to the broker has the authority. So if the broker tells you, I'm sorry, I can't do it, they're just flat out lying to you. How's that? And final shameless plug, if you're tired of hearing excuses and you want fair, transparent, honest approach to selling your house, you might head over to talkingrealty.com, check out my team. We've got you covered everywhere in Ohio without the BS. So if anybody tells you, hey, that's the standard commission, I'm sorry, I'm not able to change it, you call BS. And with that, I'll let you get back to your day. Thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you learned a little something, maybe had a little fun. Feel free to share this episode with someone, especially if they're selling a home. The Talking Realty podcast is brought to you by Associates Title and the Ohio Property Group, a family-owned brokerage serving all 88 Ohio counties with outstanding realtor services. If you have questions, if you have topics or guests you'd like to see and hear on this podcast, I'd love to hear from you. Just head over to talkingrealty.com and say hello. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, keep making smart moves in your real estate journey. For the Ohio Property Group, this is Glen Whitten signing off. And remember, you can sell it. We can help.